Do not forget to hit that like and subscribe button, guys, if you're new to the channel and if you enjoyed this video. So the other day I got, somebody came to me and they basically told me that Oleksandr Usyk would give Anthony Joshua a lot of problems. He's a very dangerous fight for Anthony Joshua, and he could possibly beat him. All right, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about that and about, you know, what chances Oleksandr Usyk has against Anthony Joshua. Now, can somebody explain to me how Oleksandr Usyk is the mandatory for Anthony Joshua's WBO heavyweight strap when he hasn't even fought at heavyweight yet? Because every interview I see where they're talking about Eddie Hearn and Anthony Joshua's next future opponents, Eddie Hearn is always mentioning the fact that, you know, Oleksandr Usyk is the mandatory for Anthony Joshua's WBO belt. Now, I know he was undisputed at cruiserweight, but he hasn't done anything at heavyweight. So how do you just move up to a weight division for the first time in your career and immediately get installed as the #1 mandatory for the heavyweight, for the WBO heavyweight championship belt? I always thought you had to fight your way to the top to be there. Now, let's say if Usyk would have fought the #1 dude ranked at WBO and beaten him, then okay. But he hasn't fought anyone yet. I believe he's gonna fight Carlos Takam, but he hasn't fought him yet. So how come he's already installed as the #1 WBO, the number one at WBO? Just let me know. That confuses me. Anyway, now Oleksandr Usyk is basically following the footsteps of Evander Holyfield, because remember, you know, in 1988, Evander Holyfield became the undisputed unified cruiserweight champion. I believe he was the first undisputed cruiserweight champion, right? And what did he do? He moved up to heavyweight, right? And if you guys know your history of that, you guys are probably, some of you guys are probably older than me, so you guys will know. But I'm like a history buff. Obviously, a lot of people wanted him to fight Mike Tyson at that time, because at the time, Mike Tyson was the undisputed heavyweight champion. And Evander Holyfield himself was going around saying he's going to fight Mike Tyson. Of course, we know what happened. Mike Tyson ended up losing his undisputed belts in the biggest upset of the century when he got knocked out against Buster James Douglas. And then what happened? James Douglas ended up fighting Evander Holyfield, and Evander Holyfield ended up knocking him out. And obviously, a lot of people felt that, oh, he got, you know, he's not really the unified champion because obviously he got it easy with Mike Tyson losing to Buster Douglas. But they never got to fight at that particular time because, of course, Mike Tyson ended up, you know, fighting Razor Ruddock, and then he ended up having, you know, these rape charges, and he spent 4 years in prison. And that's why they finally ended up fighting by 1996. They were supposed to fight by 1990, 91, but, you know. Anyway, you guys probably know about that, but Oleksandr Usyk is trying to follow Evander Holyfield's footsteps. He's become the undisputed cruiserweight champion at cruiserweight, and now he's supposedly going to fight Carlos Takam. Now, for a first fight at heavyweight against Carlos Takam, that's a good opponent. Carlos Takam is a good opponent because, you know, you would think the first time you're going to a new division, you would think they would just put him in there against a bum, right? Some bum heavyweight that he could easily destroy. But the one thing about Oleksandr Usyk is he's always been a guy who's immediately fought the best in his division. I mean, when he was fighting at cruiserweight, look at how many fights he has. He immediately started fighting guys like Marco Huck, Marius Briedis. Michael Hunter was a good fighter. God, what's that guy's name? I always forget that guy's name. The dude who schooled what's his name? Eddie Chambers. And of course, Marius Gassiev. He immediately started fighting the champions. He didn't, and also the dude who fought, who beat Marco Huck for the WBO strap. So he immediately was fighting the champions, right? So that's why it doesn't surprise me that he's immediately fighting a good contender, a good heavyweight contender in Carlos Takam. Now, if he should beat Carlos Takam, a lot of people are saying he's going to fight Anthony Joshua. And like I said, I've seen a few people saying that's a competitive fight. I do think that Oleksandr Usyk is very talented. when it comes to the speed department. And if I'm not mistaken, didn't Alexander Usyk fight Joe Joyce in the amateurs? And didn't he beat him in the amateurs? Now, Joe Joyce is a 6'4" heavyweight, and who's a pretty good prospect. Although he's very slow, he's a pretty good prospect, heavy-handed. And he got dominated by Alexander Usyk. I think Alexander Usyk, the advantages that he would have against Anthony Joshua would be his speed advantage. When it comes to his, because one thing about Alexander Usyk is he's like the Energizer Bunny. Whenever I see him fight, the thing that I always notice I take away from his fights is he outworks all his opponents. Like if you see him against everybody he fights, he throws so many punches, and his opponents tend to not keep up with it, right? Like against, for example, Michael Hunter was doing very well against Alexander Usyk. But what ended up happening was he could not keep up with the pace, the work rate. It's kind of like a prime Manny Pacquiao. If you guys remember, a prime Manny Pacquiao used to throw so many punches a round, and his opponents could not keep up with his work rate. Some of them will have success, but then later on they will fade because he was just so they couldn't keep up with his hand speed and his work rate. He was just constantly throwing his hands, and he just would eventually overwhelm them and overwork them and shit. So that's kind of how I see Alexander Usyk, is he overwhelms his opponents. They cannot keep up with his punches. They're like, okay, they're good for the first half of the fight, but then the second half of the fight, Alexander Usyk turns it up. He tends to turn it up, and then they just fade, and they just start going to, you know, survivor mode and just protecting themselves rather than letting their hands go. One thing about Usyk is he does get hit. I've seen him get hit clean, so it's not like he's like this defensive wizard where he never gets hit. I've seen him get clipped, especially by counters. I saw him got hit by, and by the way, wasn't he going to fight, sorry, let me just change the subject here, but wasn't he going to fight Alexander Povetkin? I did see some reports where he was going to fight Alexander Povetkin. That would have been a great fight. That would have been a great test. A great test. I mean, imagine if he would have gone in there and schooled Alexander Povetkin. Okay, that would have made, he would have made a statement like that. But I'm still curious to see how he does against Carlos Takam. But anyway, when it comes to Usyk, he's like the Energizer Bunny who throws a bunch of punches in bunches, and he tends to overwhelm his opponent. Now, he's never fought somebody as big as Anthony Joshua, at least not that I'm aware of. He's never fought somebody 6'6", and I definitely don't think he's ever fought somebody with the arm reach or the arm length, whatever, of Anthony Joshua. He definitely hasn't fought anybody who hits as hard as Anthony Joshua. And the thing about the heavyweight division is, in the heavyweight division, all it takes is one punch. So it might be a thing where maybe Alexander Usyk is winning rounds. I do think he'll be able to win rounds against Anthony Joshua. I do think that. But let's say you see him winning a couple of rounds against Anthony Joshua, but then he gets caught with something. Because Alexander Usyk would get caught by Anthony Joshua at some point during that fight. Because, like I said, he gets hit. He's hittable. He's not like he's this defensive wizard. And the thing is, what happens when he gets hit with that punch? How does he react? How is he able to take it? And I would think that Anthony Joshua would walk Alexander Usyk down. I mean, the fact that he's much naturally bigger, he's most definitely naturally stronger. So he would probably feel confident in himself just walking him down, Alexander Usyk. Alexander Usyk is a decent puncher. I don't think he's a monster puncher. I know he knocked out Tony Bellew out cold, but I've never really considered Alexander Usyk as like this monster puncher, like this one punch knockout artist where he just hit you like a Deontay Wilder and knock you out cold. He's more of a guy that he beats you by accumulation of punishment, just constantly hitting you. You know, kind of like Vasily Lomachenko. Vasily Lomachenko is not really a big puncher, but he's constantly, he overwhelms you with the amount of punches he lands on you that eventually he beats you just with accumulation of punishment. That's the kind of way I see Alexander Usyk. I don't see him as a guy that just knocks you out cold. He's more of a guy that eventually he just breaks you down he's hitting you so much. He's hitting you so fresh, so often that you're all cut up, your face is all bruised up, and eventually he beats you like that. You get TKO'd by him, right? That's how I look at Mr. Usyk. So when it comes to the punching department, I wouldn't think that Anthony Joshua will be showing respect for Usyk. I think he'll be coming forward against Usyk and try to walk him down. If Usyk were to beat Anthony Joshua, and then you would have to be comparing him to the likes of Evander Holyfield, because again, the only one who's been able to do that was Evander Holyfield, who, in my opinion, is one of the best American heavyweights of all time. In my opinion, I still think to this day he was the last great American heavyweight. Some people think, I don't know what I'm talking about. It's Deontay Wilder, but Deontay Wilder has not done what Evander Holyfield did in his career. Evander Holyfield was unifying with guys, fighting dudes. Look at the resume of Holyfield. He pretty much fought everybody. Like this guy literally fought everybody. So that's why I respect Evander Holyfield as a fighter, because he fought everybody in their prime. So, like I said, he was trying to fight Mike Tyson, but it wasn't his fault that Tyson went to jail and all that shit. So that's an interesting fight, though. Like, I wouldn't hate that fight if it happened, Usyk versus Anthony Joshua. But I would definitely be leaning towards Anthony Joshua, just because I think the size difference, the size advantage Anthony Joshua would have over Usyk, and the power advantage. You know how they say a big man beats a little man, right? And I think that's what Usyk is going to find out at heavyweight is the dudes are a lot harder to knock out. B, the dudes hit a lot harder. So you have to be a lot more cautious. Right? I don't think he'll be taking the risk that he takes at cruiserweight, because he tends to take risks at cruiserweight a lot, where he'll jump in there and throw a bunch of punches. But I don't think he'll be doing that at heavyweight, especially with the big punchers. I think he'll be a lot more cautious, and you probably would see his work rate drop dramatically, because again, he's known for being a guy who throws a lot of punches, but you only do that if you're a fighter if you feel that there's no threat coming back, right? But I think his punching output will drop dramatically against like somebody like a Deontay Wilder or like a Anthony Joshua, because he doesn't want to take the risk of getting countered by something massive against one of these dudes. That's an interesting fight. I wouldn't hate him to fight. I just don't understand how he's immediately installed as the WBO mandatory when he hasn't even fought a heavyweight yet. That's a little confusing to me, Again, I was always under the impression that you had to work your ass off to to get yourself ranked up in the WBO rankings. And it'll kind of be fucked up if Oleksandr Usyk got a title shot first in Dillian White, when Dillian White has been fighting nothing but top heavyweights. So, that's all I'm saying. What do you guys think of this fight, by the way? Let me know in the comment section. Like, what do you guys think of Oleksandr Usyk versus Anthony Joshua? Let me know in the comment section below this video. And thanks for watching, guys. I'm out. Subscribe if you're new to the channel.